Good evening. I'm Robinson, a physics faculty. Today I will be discussing about an important topic which is called as the Gauss law, which is relating to the chapter called as electrostatics. So I'm going to discuss about the Gauss law. It is very important because when we talk about the application of Gauss law, or when we consider the conceptual importance of Gauss law, from electrostatics to electromagnetic induction, the applications of Gauss law keep coming. And when it comes to the entrance examinations like JEE Mains or NEET or even the advanced, Gauss law plays a very vital role because many questions, conceptual and numerical questions, will keep coming from Gauss law and its applications. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about this Gauss law. Okay, so when I say it is Gauss law, we'll try to understand exactly what the statement of Gauss law is, and then we'll try to analyze it. Okay. Now let us say there are charges distributed in space as Q1, Q2, minus Q3, Q4, minus Q5, like this, so on and so forth. They're distributed. Then Gauss law says I can choose some surface, okay, of any shape. I can choose a surface of some shape, okay, and then I can find out the Gauss, the electric field at some point on it. I want to find out the electric field at some point on it, okay. But before that, we need to understand what Gauss has said. What Gauss said is, if you have any enclosure, this is a three-dimensional enclosure, okay, then the flux, net flux through the enclosure, it says that net flux through the enclosure, that is phi net, is equal to the net charge inside by epsilon naught. This is what he said. The net flux is equal to the charge enclosed within the Gaussian surface by epsilon naught. It's a simple condition actually. See, what we can understand is, suppose I'm having some charge, okay, I have some charge, let's say some Q charge is there. Then the electric field or electric lines of force from a positive charge will come out, okay, perpendicularly from it. We know this. Then the number of lines of force that exist around this charge is directly proportional to the charge in it. Okay. Then the proportionality constant, he has found out and calculated that it is equal to epsilon naught. Okay. And then he came up with this condition saying that the net flux through the surface, is charge inside by epsilon naught, where epsilon naught is the absolute permittivity. It is called as absolute permittivity of the medium. Okay, this you must have already known because I'm just talking about the condition where we are discussing about the Gauss law, because prior to Gauss law, the Coulomb's law is there. In Coulomb's law itself, you must have studied about this epsilon naught. Now, what do you mean by this net flux? We'll try to understand that also. Here, what happens is, because of the positive charge, you would find that the electric lines of force are coming out. Some number of electric lines of force are coming out depending upon the charge. Okay. Even because of this Q2 also, you find that the electric lines of force are coming out. Okay. Then, because of the negative charge, what happens is, we'll try to represent this negative charge with another color so that you can understand it. Because of the negative charge, the electric lines of force are coming inside. Okay, they are coming inside. Then how many number of lines of force are going out and how many lines of force are coming in? The number of lines of force which are going out will be nothing but called as flux inside, and the number of lines of force going out is called as flux outside. Then he says the net flux, try to understand this, it is a net flux, that is flux inside difference the flux outside. We are talking about that flux there. Okay, this net flux is called as net flux is flux inside minus flux outside. You have to keep that point in mind. It is difference. When I say difference, it is larger minus smaller always. Remember that difference always means larger minus smaller. We are not going to take the negative sign there. There's no sign because its flux is a scalar quantity, and we need only the magnitude, so we don't have to take its sign as negative. So it should be larger minus smaller. Now, here we can simply understand one very small thing. That is, if the flux, will go to the next page. If the flux coming inside is greater than the flux going outside, okay, is greater than the flux going outside, then I can simply conclude that the positive charge inside the Gaussian surface is greater than the negative charge. Okay. Just a minute. The negative charge is greater than the positive charge because flux will be going inside because of the negative charge. So therefore, negative charge will be greater than the positive charge. Okay. Try to understand this. If the flux inside is greater than the flux outside. Now, suppose the flux outside is greater than the flux inside. Okay. Then you will simply find that the positive charge is greater than the negative charge inside the flux, inside the Gaussian surface. Positive charge is more than the negative charge. Simple conclusions can be done. Okay, now we'll try to understand the other condition. The other condition is that suppose you're having some flux, some lines of force are there. Okay, we are having some lines of force. All right, the lines of force are present like this. Then you must have already studied that the flux through the given surface, okay, this is some surface and this is the aerial vector. Remember, aerial vector is always perpendicular to the perpendicular to the plane of the area. Okay, it is perpendicular to the plane of the area. The electric field is in this direction. Let us say this angle is theta. Then the electric field is defined as flux per unit area. Okay, it is simply given as flux per unit area. Okay, so I can simply write this as nothing but phi is equal to E into A. Okay, but if I consider the component of vector A along the direction of E, I will write it as A cos theta. Okay, I'll put it as A cos theta. Therefore, this is EA cos theta. Okay, then or simply I'll write this as nothing but E bar dot A bar. Vectorially, I can write as E bar dot A bar because flux is a scalar quantity. This is for a uniform electric field. For non-uniform electric field, what happens is, when I say it's a non-uniform electric field, we'll try to understand that whenever anything is non-uniform, we always use calculus or integrals. Okay, so now let us try to represent that. It is given as flux is integral E bar dot dA bar, E bar dot dA bar. Okay, where dA bar is the vector or aerial vector and E bar is the electric field vector. Okay, right. So this is about the relation between electric field and flux. All right, now just observe this. This is equation 1 here. Okay, we'll call this as equation 1 here, and what you have derived just now, or what you have understood just now, is equation 2. So from 1 and 2 we get an interesting relation. The relation says that integral E bar dot dA bar, okay, is Q inside by epsilon naught. Okay, Q inside by epsilon naught. So you'll find that you are getting a very clear relation between electric field, okay, electric field here, and charge. That means if you know the charge, you can find the electric field. If you know the electric field, you can find the charge. Okay, keep this point in mind. From this equation, we are able to understand that if E bar is the electric field, if you know it, you can find out what is the charge. In other words, if you know the charge inside the Gaussian surface, you can find out what is the electric field on the surface. All right. Then this integral represents the aerial, what do you call, surface area. Okay, it is also called as surface integral. I'll discuss about that a bit later. Have you understood this? I hope you have understood this very clearly. We'll go further now. Now, we'll try to understand some important points about this, the Gaussian surface. What are the important points? to remember about the Gaussian surface. Okay. Now, first thing is, whenever I'm talking about the flux, okay, the flux, as I told you, is the net flux, that is the flux going out, okay, difference the flux going in, okay, the flux going out difference the flux going in. Secondly, the electric field on the left of the equation, as you can see here, the electric field on the left of the equation is the electric field due to charges inside and outside. Electric field on the left side is the net electric field, or the resultant electric field of the charges inside, okay, and the charges outside. Okay. Then the third important thing to be remembered is the charge on the right side of the surface. Now we are finding that this charge Qin, this charge Qin is the charge which is present only inside the surface. So when I take charge Q inside, as it is, you can see from here, I am taking charge only which are inside, Q1, Q2 minus Q3. I am not considering the charges outside. Okay, when I take charge on the right side of the equation, when I take Q in, it is only because of the charges inside and not outside. Why? I will tell you that also. We'll try to understand this first. Okay, so charge inside is Q1 plus Q2 minus Q3. I mean, whatever that I have taken, I put it like that. Okay, I've taken this as Q1 and Q2 as positive and Q3 as negative. So you get it like this. So if it is positive, you have to add. If it is negative, you have to subtract. Okay, this is called as the net charge inside the surface. Then another important aspect of this is the flux through the surface, okay, is independent of the shape of the Gaussian surface. The net flux, okay, does not depend on the shape of the Gaussian surface. Depend on shape of the surface. Okay, so whenever I say surface here, remember it's a Gaussian surface. It's a simple explanation. I'll just tell you how it is. For example, if suppose I have a charge Q, okay, and I told you that it is consisting of some lines of force. Okay, so we have lines of force like this, and then like this, and then like this, like this. Okay, we're having different lines of force coming out from it in different directions. Now, if I take some surface of some arbitrary shape, okay, I'm taking some surface of some arbitrary shape, and at the same time I will take a regular shape like a circle. If suppose I take like a circle, okay, then you can find that the lines of force are same. Number of lines of force in this surface and in this surface are same. It's independent of the shape. So when it is independent of the shape, what is the advantage is we always consider regular shapes. We can always consider what? Regular shapes. Why? Because integration of regular shapes becomes easy. Try to understand that point. I will only take regular shapes like a sphere, a cylinder, a cube. I will take only those regular shapes. I will not take some arbitrary shape. Otherwise, the integration process becomes very difficult. Okay. Now, try to understand this point very clearly. Then, the flux is independent of the shape of the surface, we said, right? Then, we will see one more aspect to this. That is, the fifth important point about this is the flux is independent of the position of the charges. Net flux, okay, net flux, okay, is independent of position of charges. Okay, independent of position of charges. What does it mean? It means that suppose I'm having some Gaussian surface. Let us say I have some Gaussian surface. Okay, I'm just drawing a Gaussian surface, and then if suppose I take some charges as Q1, Q2, Q3, okay, and then what I'll do, I'll again change their positions. Let us say I'm bringing this Q1, Q2, Q3 in different positions. Okay, Suppose I'm bringing this minus Q3 here. Okay, then I'm taking this Q2 here and Q1 here. I'm changing the positions. If I change the positions, obviously, okay, you see that the net flux is not changing. Okay, net flux through the surface is not changing. Try to understand that point very clearly. Okay, so this is the another important aspect. Then coming to another important conclusion, that is this net flux, if suppose it is 0, let us say net flux comes to be 0, then can we say there is no charge inside? Obviously not. Why? Because the net flux can be 0 when the net charge is 0. When can the net charge be 0? When there is an equal and opposite charge present in it. Simple. If suppose you're having a positive charge and a negative charge, then Q inside will simply be equal to 0. Then flux also will be equal to 0. So what happens? You cannot say that there is no charge inside. You can only say that it may be consisting of equal and opposite charges, or it may be consisting of dipoles. Okay, it may be consisting of even dipoles. So if the dipoles are present in given some surface, then the net flux in the surface is always 0. All right, so keep that point in mind. Then coming to another aspect, that is we were talking about the integral. Okay, so when I said integral, I represented it as nothing but surface integral. This is called as surface integral. Okay, so when I say surface integral, suppose I'm saying that there is a solid sphere. Okay, let's say there is a solid sphere of some radius r. We'll take the radius as r. From center to here, the radius is r. Okay, then if I am considering the surface, okay, integral dA for this surface will work out to be 4 pi r square, which is nothing but surface area. All right, so if suppose it is a cube, okay, let's say it is some cubical shape, right, something like this, a solid cubical shape like this, then the surface area will then simply be equal to what? It will simply be equal to dA will come to be nothing but 4a square. Okay, sorry, 6a square. It works out to be 6a square because there are 6 sides to it, and each side is consisting of a of some area. I mean, side of A. Okay, there are 6 faces, so total area will work out to be 6a square. Like that, depending on the shape, we have to use this integral. Keep that point in mind very clearly. Okay, right. So this is another important aspect to it. Finally, I've always been telling that, I'm taking about sphere, cylinder, cube. That means this Gaussian surface, okay, actually can be of any shape. It can be of any shape, but okay, it can be of any shape, no doubt, but it must be a 3-dimensional enclosure. It must be a 3-dimensional enclosure. Means it should be, okay, only a sphere, a cylinder, a cube, okay, it can also be a cone, conical shape, whatever it may be, but it should be definitely a 3-dimensional enclosure. It cannot be an open surface. It cannot be a circle. It cannot be a hemisphere. Okay, so it cannot be some square. It cannot be like that. It has to be definitely be a 3-dimensional enclosure. All right. So these are the important things to be kept in mind. Okay, when we are discussing about the Gauss law, all these things play a very, very vital role. Okay, so I hope you have understood. Now we'll try to apply this Gaussian surface or Gauss law to another aspect. Okay, we'll try to apply this to another aspect, that is called as, see, actually we are having 4 spheres. One is solid conducting sphere, hollow conducting sphere, hollow non-conducting sphere, and solid non-conducting sphere. I am going to discuss the 4th one, that is called as solid non-conducting sphere, because lot many times the applications will come from that. Now let us try to understand that solid non-conducting sphere. Okay, let us say I'll just write down. It is a solid non-conducting sphere. Okay. Solid non-conducting sphere. When I say non-conducting, remember, it does not allow the charges to flow. That's the difference between conducting and non-conducting. Conducting means they allow the charges to flow. Non-conducting would mean it allows the charges to flow. So suppose I'm having a solid non-conducting sphere. Okay. I have a solid non-conducting sphere. I think I'll better draw with a different color so that it becomes more clear for you. So we have a solid non-conducting sphere. Okay. And let us say it is given some charge Q. Okay. Let's assume that it is given some charge Q. Then what happens is all this charge will be present inside and on the surface. Okay. It will be present inside and on the surface. Okay. It will be distributed like this. It's uniformly charged. Whenever I say uniformly charged, then it means the charge per unit volume, that is called as volume charge density. It is called as volume charge density. Okay. And it is represented by the letter rho equals to charge per unit volume. It is charge per unit volume. Okay. So when I say it is charge per unit volume, then the total charge will be nothing but, so rho will be simply equal to Q by 4 by 3 pi r cube, because r is the radius of the sphere. Let us say the radius of the sphere is r. Okay. Let's assume the radius of the sphere is r here. All right. Then this will be equal to Q by 4 by 3 pi r cube. That is the volume charge density. I'm assuming that to be constant. All right. Now I want to find out what is the electric field at some distance x. I want to find out what is the electric field at some distance x. Okay. Then I can find out the electric field at this distance x such that x is inside the surface. So first consideration is x is less than r. When I say x is less than r, it is inside the surface. I want to find the electric field at this point. So I'll draw one Gaussian surface. What should be the shape of the Gaussian surface? It must be spherical. And what must be its radius? Its radius must be x. Are you getting me? So then I want to find out what is the electric field at this point. So what I'll do, I will be considering, just observe this. I will be considering some area here. Okay. I'm considering some area on the surface. And the aerial vector will be obviously perpendicular to the surface. Then electric field also must be in the same direction, because there's a uniform charge inside everywhere here. So electric field also should be away from the positive charge. It must be radially coming out. Just now I told you that the lines of force always they come out perpendicularly to the surface. So what happens is you'll be simply getting the angle between the aerial vector and electric field. Okay, they both are in the same direction. So angle between the electric field and aerial vector is 0. So you'll simply get E bar. Just a minute. You'll be getting the electric field, that is E bar dot A bar will simply equal to E into A. But here I will consider it as a small area dA. I'm considering a small area dA. So what I'll do is I will simply write this as I'll write them both as dA, means a small area on the surface. Okay. Now I'll apply the Gauss law here, but before I apply the Gauss law, what I need to find out what is the charge inside. Okay, I need to find out what is the charge inside the surface. This has to be known to me. How do I know that? Let us say now we are saying total charge is Q here. Okay, I'm assuming the total charge is Q here, and then we don't know what's the charge here. So we need to find out that charge. How do we find out? We'll use this condition. That is, total charge is Q by 4 by 3 pi r cube, then the charge inside will be q inside by 4 by 3 pi x cube. Why? Because I'm taking the Gaussian surface of radius x. So simply this gets cancelled off. I can simply say charge inside is equal to qx cube by r cube. Okay. From this I'll get this condition that q inside is coming out to be qx cube by r cube. Now I'll apply Gauss law. Okay. Applying Gauss law. Okay. How do I get it? When I apply Gauss law, what happens here is integral. Our condition of Gauss law is saying integral E bar dot dA bar. So I'll simply write it as EDA. Why? Because both are in the same direction. Cos theta, theta is 0, cos 0 is 1. So therefore I'll get as simply E into dA, that is equal to Q inside by epsilon naught. Then we'll see one more thing here. Here this is every point is uniformly distributed. That means all are equidistant points here on the Gaussian surface. It's a sphere. So therefore electric field at every point must be same. So when I say electric field is same at every point, then E must be constant. So I'll take E outside. I will write it as integral dA is equal to Q inside. We got Q inside as how much? We got as nothing but Qx cube by R cube. So I'll write this here. I'll write it as Qx cube by epsilon naught R cube. Okay. And then E into integral dA will give us the surface area of the Gaussian surface. So Gaussian surface is having radius x. So therefore its surface area will be 4 pi x square. That is equal to qx cube by epsilon naught r cube. So I'll simply cancel this off. Okay. And I'll simply get the electric field inside is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into qx by r cube. Okay. A very, very important conclusion, very, very important condition. Okay. What are we going to conclude from here? I'll write this equation once again on the other board. Electric field inside is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into qx by r cube I'm getting. Okay. Sometimes he might give you only surface charge density. So rho is given, then what do we do? Rho is q by 4 by 3 pi r cube. Okay. So I can write q is equal to rho into 4 by 3 pi r cube. And then I'll substitute that q here. Okay. I'll substitute it here. So what will I get? I will get it as nothing but electric field inside is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into 4 by 3 pi r cube into x by r cube. Any problem? You can easily understand that 4 pi gets cancelled. So an r cube gets cancelled. So you're left with what? You're left with into rho is there, of course. Then you'll simply get just nothing but rho x by 3 epsilon naught. Okay. So electric field is also represented as rho x by 3 epsilon naught in terms of volume charge density. Now, what do we conclude from here? We get conclusion that electric field is directly proportional to the distance from the center. At the center, what happens? Electric field is 0. At the center, x is 0. Okay, would mean electric field is 0. So electric field is 0 only at the center, not anywhere else. And as we move away from the center, okay, I'll just go back to the diagram there. As we move away from the center, what is happening is as we move away from the center, the electric field is going on increasing linearly. That's the condition that we're getting. Now we'll try to understand one more thing here. That is, at a point outside or on the surface, we call it as second condition on the surface. Okay, what do we get? On the surface, you can put x is equal to r in the previous case, because if you put x is equal to r, all the charge is present inside the surface only. So you don't have to find separate charge for that. Therefore, if you put simply x is equal to r, you'll get electric field on the surface will simply be equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r square. This is the maximum electric field, and this electric field will be as if the total charge is present inside. Okay, see, actually charge is distributed. Now try to understand this again clearly. What I'm saying is charge is distributed. Originally we are saying that the charge is actually distributed. How the charge is distributed like this? Okay, everywhere it is present. But what is happening here is, when I'm considering the electric field at a point outside or on the surface at a distance r from it, I'm getting the electric field like this. It's not depending on, see, one charge may be there here. It is not depending on this distance. Okay, it is simply depending upon the distance from the center. That means what? It means that the electric field on the surface is acting as if this whole charge is present at the center. Okay, it is acting as if the whole charge is present at the center. So that means I can simply replace all these charges and simply replace it with a single charge, okay, q here. So that means even a solid sphere is acting like a point charge. That's the advantage of Gauss law. It is, otherwise the things would have been complicated for us. Okay, our definition, our understanding of electrostatics is all based on point charges. You know that. So what this Gauss law is doing is it is converting this solid sphere into a single point charge. So the electric field on the surface is as if the whole charge is concentrated at the center. Then the third conclusion that we are going to get, or third condition, the condition is if x is greater than r. So simply if I take x is greater than r, what happens? As it is, the charge is distributed like this, and then I'm going to consider a Gaussian surface which is outside. Okay, right? I'm considering some Gaussian surface outside. Then this distance from the center is x. Okay, it's a radius, it's a Gaussian surface of radius x. Then all the charges present here only. So if I apply Gauss law there, I'll simply get integral E bar dot, I mean E into d again, because again it's a uniform shape. It is q inside by epsilon naught. This electric field must be constant. Integral dA will give you area, surface area of the Gaussian surface, which is 4 pi x square. So I'll simply get this is equal to charge inside is total charge q. So therefore I'll simply get this as nothing but q by epsilon naught. So I'll simply get charge outside or electric field outside will be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by x square. Okay. So electric field on the surface is maximum. Here it is maximum. Here electric field is decreasing inversely as a square of the distance from the center, not from the surface. Electric field is decreasing inversely as a square of the distance from the center. Are you getting me? Right. Now I can draw a graph which is called as the electric field distance graph, or simply we call it as the EX graph. So I'll just draw the graph. Let's see how it looks like. So we have a y-axis there, and we have another x-axis here, and then on the x-axis we are taking the distance from the center as x, and on the y-axis we are considering it as electric field. So we said that electric field is directly proportional to the distance from the center in the first case. Okay, so I'll simply get a graph like this. Just observe that. A straight line, and then a curve like this. Here it is showing that electric field is directly proportional distance from the center. When I took x is less than r, I got that condition that electric field is increasing linearly as a distance from the center. On the surface, when r is the radius, that is the surface, at that point it is maximum. Okay, this is maximum electric field, right? And outside it is decreasing inversely as a distance, square of the distance from the center. So I get a shape of this dot. Okay. So by just remembering the graph, you will be in a position to know how the electric field is changing in a solid non-conducting sphere. Electric field in a solid non-conducting sphere. All right. I hope you have understood. Now we'll try to go into a problem. Okay. Let's get into a problem there. Uh, I'll just show you a problem. Just a minute, please.